Okay, so welcome back to part two of drawing the Batgirl video. This time around I'm going to be drawing, I'm just going to be inking the rough. Last time I roughed it out. This time I'm going to be inking the rough, and there's going to be some adjustments from this point on anyway. So, hi, my name is Luis Escobar. I'm a storyboard artist in the Simpsons television show. I've been working on the show for over 20 years now, and I'm here to empower you. And one of these ways of empowering you is to show you some of the process of drawing. So let's get started talking about this next part of the drawing Batgirl video. So, all right. So now that I've got her roughed out, well, actually, I'm not going to start inking until I make sure that I've got everything exactly the way I want it. So at this point, as I talked about in the last video, you saw how sometimes I get myself in trouble by not really constructing the face right. I'm just kind of eyeballing the features into place, and sometimes the eyes get too big. They're in the wrong position. I just get off. I'm just off on some of this stuff. So here what I'm doing is adjusting the eyes. I adjusted the eyes, and I'm probably going to shrink the mouth, move the head, the eyes a little bit further down so that she could have more forehead. Like I said, in this style, like a baby face type of structure is better, is more necessary. So here, okay, so this that I'm doing here, remember the radiating lines that I talked about as far as when I was doing the wrinkles or the folds in the last video. I would just kind of, from the pinch point, I would just do these radiating lines. Well, now I'm going in and I'm going to adjust them so that they wrap around the form so that it feels more solid. I'm reinforcing the solidity of the form through the folds, and sometimes less is more. So I'm gonna also decide what folds are necessary, but in the case of these folds, I have to adjust them slightly. They're still pointing at certain points of her chest because of the tension. But again, wrapping around the arm, just wrapping around is what's going on here. Just making sure that the details of the arm reinforce the perspective and the form that lies underneath. So it's very important to do that. Otherwise, the drawing ends up looking flat. I'm making adjustments to the hand. It was okay though after I looked at the reference, but then I decided that I was just gonna go off on my own and do the hands the way I felt like it rather than what was on the reference, and making more adjustments to the folds. Sometimes less is more, so just deleting some of the line work there. I'm taking a good long look here of what I've got and what decisions I have to make and what I haven't done yet. And there's a small little detail here on the pocket that I haven't done. But also whether or not I got the placement of the pocket right. According to the model there that I'm using, the pocket actually starts on the line there, near the top of the line there. If you notice on the Batgirl reference where the pocket actually starts. I'm checking to see. It's kind of like a perspective line that I'm checking to see if they line up. And again, more of the face. I'm not sure exactly at this point what. Oh, I'm adjusting the mask. Yeah, I'm taking a good look at the mask in the model sheet or in the reference I'm using there, and I didn't draw the mask correctly. Especially if you see in the profile by Batgirl's head there, you could actually see the actual shape of the mask. The nose, trying to decide what type of nose to give her, how much detail on the nose, whether or not I'm going to make it a structural nose, if it's just going to be a shape. Have to save it there. Hard eraser tool, get rid of some of this stuff. So I'm making adjustments on the face and all these other things, and eventually I'm going to just erase it and start over. So that's coming, so just wait for that. But I forgot that there was still a lot of adjustments I needed to do before I started inking. And again, the hair was giving me a ton of trouble. It doesn't really start looking like hair until near the end. And you can see me attempting sometimes later on maybe where I try to make adjustments, try to figure out how to make that hair look a little bit more hair-like. More adjustments to the cowl. Just slight adjustments. Looking around, what else can be fixed up? What else can be tightened up? Where are things too vague? Is really what I'm searching for now. The drawing is rough enough so that maybe I could ink it, but before I commit to inking anything, I wanted to be absolutely sure that I worked out anything that's too vague. And you can again see me turning the drawing around on occasion. I paused for a while looking at the drawing, trying to see what needed to be done. Less is more. I'm seeing how much less I can get away with, what it looks like if there's some, if there's not, if there's, you know. As far as pinching and folds. the pinch areas of the folds. What haven't I done? And I haven't really worked out that collar. And nor have I worked out this zipper area on the front of the jacket. Making adjustments of placement again, because I'm going to be drawing this by hand once it's done. I needed to make sure that the placement of her body is in the right spot. Okay, so now I turn it into a blue line. Because I'm ready to start inking. Now personally I still don't like the face. Even now that I'm looking at it, I don't like the face. So I'm glad I eventually changed it. But at this point I wasn't being critical enough. So I'm using Manga Studio or Clip Studio Pro, and I just created a vector layer to ink on. And I really like this program for inking because you can use it with a vector tool, and you get all the benefits of a vector drawing. And it does that auto smoothing on your own line, so you don't get that wobbly line that you would get if you were doing it in Photoshop. It really does feel a lot more like inking on paper. It's the closest thing to inking on paper you can have. And I created a raster layer in here for some reason. What am I doing? It looks like I'm going to make an adjustment of some sort. I forgot what I've done. Probably has to do with the face. Oh, okay, so I'm looking at the eyes, and the eyes are still way too vague. So I decided to go in there with the pencil tool with a new raster layer and redraw the eyes better. Give the eyes more solidity, make it look like they have volume, so that the eyelashes have a direction. So that the eyes look like they're balls and sockets with lids on top of them, that sort of thing. So I'm adjusting the eyes. The eyes are really important, and it's an extremely good idea to like just study eyes a lot. Try to get them to look right, because that's where as human beings, our eyes go to other people's eyes. So there's the thickness of the eyelashes, and then on top of that there's the eye, the wrinkle of the eye lid up there, and I had that corner to the eye right there. It just, you could see that it turns, and there's a corner. With the bottom of the eyelashes there, and again, thickness of the eye, the eyelashes define how they wrap around the top of the eyelid there, and then you actually get the eyelid itself. trying to refine and define the eyeball and how how the eyelid wraps around the eyeball. And get that pupil deep inside the eye there. I think I may have drawn it too big. And I don't like the way that looks. Her eyes look too droopy. Looking at it now, they just look too droopy, and that's one of the reasons why I ended up changing it. And again, the nose, it's so tricky with the nose. How much nose? Should it just be a line? Should we have a shadow there? How defined am I going to do this nose? And I was just like, that doesn't look good. That doesn't look good. That doesn't look good. And part of it was because the eyes weren't working the way they ought. And really, the eyes should probably be moved down. Further down in the face. Again, with the try to get the whole baby face look, and again those droopy eyes, they just it's just not working. And here I am trying to see if I could make the hair look better for myself. Like I just didn't like the way the hair was looking, and I'm like, well, if it looks like this, what do you know, I'm just making adjustments to see, does the hair look better if I do this? And I looked at it, and I'm like, I don't know, is it better? Let me get rid of more stuff just to see. Squinting, looking at it, staring at it. Is that a better, does that look more like hair? And then I erased the blue original version of the eyes, so I could get a better idea as to what it all looks like now that I've got rid of it. And so I guess I should turn that blue too, or turn everything red just to see what it looks like as a whole. So faces are extremely difficult, and yeah, you just work on them and fix them up and try to get them to look right. And sometimes you think you got it, but you really don't. So you try it again, and you try it again, and you just keep refining. The reason by the way, that I'm doing this video and I'm still roughing stuff out, and it all kind of and it'll continue with an ink, is because I did all this in one sitting, in one session. The last video that I recorded the session, how long I actually drew, and this is how long this session actually lasted. So I started and I kept on refining and I kept on adjusting this rough, and I'm moving the ear this time because the ear really, the kind of the rule of thumb with proportions with the ear is that the ear lines up with the top of the brow and the bottom of the nose, and if you were to draw a line all the way across, you'd get, that's the size of the ear in general. So it's a good rule of thumb, even if you're drawing a cartoony head that has completely anatomically incorrect proportions. You kind of want to have that notion, and I didn't like logically. if I was doing doing this anatomically correct, like or sound, because her eyes are obviously kind of humongous, so they are not anatomically sound. They would have to be much bigger. But I'm taking liberties here. Now there's a very long pause here. It's probably because I got interrupted. I'm talking to somebody or something. I thought I was going to be editing some of that stuff out, but I guess not. Okay, so rotating a little bit. Okay, now we're pulling out. Now I'm going to reduce the opacity, turn it into blue, and now I'm going to try to do the inking. So once again, I'm not happy with my rough. I think the solution to the problem of the face, and the whole time I'm fighting this face, I'm not happy with the face, which it doesn't go away. No matter how much I try to fix it by adjusting what I have is wrong. I just don't, it's just bad. It's just, I don't like it. So I'm sitting here like, maybe if I increase the size of her head on the top, I'll make it better. And it didn't quite work. And I tried to do it the lazy way by just kind of using transform tool. The whole time I was kind of trying to save myself the work of having to redraw the head. And here I redid, see again, instead of just free transforming the head, I just redrew it instead, which is what I should have done in the first place. I was just trying to be lazy. And fix the cowl, trying to make, because I thought that the solution to fixing the problems that I saw with her face were just make her head bigger. And I was thinking maybe I could add a highlight there. What would it look like? And then I think eventually I decided against it. And once again, having trouble with the hair there. How much hair should be in there? Should be showing. It looks terrible. It's like it's just like it looks like she's just got like a giant wart coming out of her head. You really can't tell what the blazes that thing coming out of the side of her head is. Just looking around, noticing to see if there's any details that I missed, and I realized that she's got very elaborate gloves. They have seams. You can see the seams. believe I shrink the mouth. Maybe. I'm not sure. Let's see if I'm happy enough to try to ink it now. The whole time I'm just trying to be happy enough to ink it. That was the challenge of all this adjusting and fudging and grabbing and yanking and pulling and looking, and just to get to the point where I could go in there and start inking. And then I'm rotating the drawing so that I could start drawing based off of the pivot points of my arm, so I can just go in there and just start really slowly doing the thing. And I think it starts off as a pretty sloppy first ink job here, and little by little I start getting a little bit more confident, a little bit more sure. But I think that at first I'm just way too sloppy and out of control. And I don't know what those extra, it's weird, like we have the eyelids, so what's the other wrinkle on it? I don't get it. I think that's supposed to be the eye socket somehow. I don't know. So I shrink the pupil a tad. Might have to thicken that up a little bit, just to make sure that it simulates that there's a lash there. So you can see the eyelash there goes. You can see the top of the eyelash, and then and you can see underneath the eyelash. And I think that got a little bit out of control there. It's pretty thick. I'm not sure if that line is working. So I should shrink. Yeah, see, I shrunk the pupil a bit, because I thought that maybe it was way too thick. I still think that's still too thick. So make her eyebrows kind of interesting, not just make it look like a noodle, and give it some character. But I think too much character on the one on the right. It's got a weird bump there. And at this point I'm still deciding on the nose. Is that the right where the nose should be? Inking the mouth, there's a lot to the mouth. There's lots of little planes, underlying planes on the mouth. So all this that I'm doing, all the work that I'm doing here on the inking, I'm eventually going to toss out. Sometimes I improvise a little bit with the ink, and it's possible to do that and not get penalized, especially doing the digital inking. You could experiment, you could improvise, because you could always erase it. When you're doing it on paper or hand drawn, you just can't do that. So when you decide to improvise, you better know that you're gonna get what you're gonna get. So when you do something that's really confident and it's not really working, and notice that I'm not tracing every single line of my rough. I'm redrawing the drawing underneath using my rough pencil as reference. But the final line is the final line. The final line is what I really want. So because it's digital, I can erase goofs. I'm a little faster and a little bit more and a bit sloppier when I work digitally, because I know that I can go back and fix it. So I thought I wanted it to be as lumpy, bumpy as it was, but apparently it just wasn't working for me. I think what I'd end up doing is straightening it up a lot more. I was trying to be a little bit too Little Mermaid there. Oh, right. No, that's actually not what I was doing. So sometimes what I like to do is outline the exterior. Outline the silhouette of the drawing. When I do this, what I'm actually doing is it's like reinforcing the silhouette, reinforcing the design of the silhouette, making it a graphic. And I like the way that looks. Some of my favorite artists do this. They just outline the figure, and what it does is it just makes it a symbol. And I wasn't supposed to do that with the interior. So I think I figure it out and I delete it or whatever. But it makes the drawing a symbol, and yeah, see, I'm like, oops, because that's inside the drawing. That's outside the drawing. That's the exterior right there. That's those parts of the cape. Turning the drawing so that it goes with natural pivot points of my hand. And I think I have to maybe rotate. Yeah. I'm going against the pivot points of my hand, and it was messing me up, but that's better. And I had to adjust this because it wasn't boxy enough. I think I'm about done with the outlining. And Oh no, the hair is missing. That gap between the hair and the cape needs to be finished. It works best when this outline is just a touch thicker. It shouldn't be too thin, so that the outline can be felt. So what I did was I noticed that it needed to be thickened up, and because it's a vector drawing, I went in there and just adjusted the thickness, made it thicker here. I accidentally hit things that thicken thing. Oh, I realized that I needed to thicken everything. That's what it was. And it's probably not thick enough. There, it's a little thicker now. I don't know if I do it again. I just realized that I missed thickening up the neck area. Yep, there it goes. So now it's a little thicker. Now I'm going to continue inking the interior, and I do that using the G pen. And the line in the interior is a little thinner than the exterior outline that I just created. And it's also got much more variation. So it's got thick and thin, while the outline is just a dead line. It's one consistent line type. It's not, it has no thick and thin. It's just straight on. It's a dead line. It doesn't have any variation. That's really sloppy. I think the whole ear is pretty sloppy. I'm not thinking about what I'm doing, and I'm just putting lines down, and it's sloppy. The entire point of inking is to explain your drawing. So I go back in and try to be clear, explaining what the ear is actually doing and what the cartilage in the ear is actually doing, so that it's clearer. I'm treating the hair like a giant mass, just a big shape. It's not about a bunch of strands of hair. But because of that, you have to be very careful, because the mass that you draw needs to look hair-like, in spite of the fact that it's just one big mass. You're not drawing every single individual hair. And again, having trouble with this hair popping up, like what can you see? I think part of the problem is that I should have drawn through, seen where the origin of the hair was coming from, and then drew from that. This is where I noticed that I didn't put any details from the model. There's like a strap there, so I decided that I was going to put it in as I inked it. So I put all those details in as I inked it. Something that I probably wouldn't have done if I was drawing analog. I felt safe because I could erase it. And the trick here was to reinforce, once again, the structure of that neck area, the perspective of the neck area. With the details of that strap. Make sure it felt like it was wrapping around that neck. It's a big, long, complicated line. Again, this is where Manga Studio is extremely helpful. If I was doing this in Photoshop, the line wouldn't have come out nearly as clean. It would have been full of wobbles and jitters. Reinforced it to the bumps there of the jacket. Reinforce the direction the jacket is headed, and that's why those two bumps there on the top. Just making sure to reinforce the perspective. That we're seeing it from our perspective going away from us. So sometimes you see me, you could see the cursor do, and then it presses, and then you see kind of so what is that? What am I doing? I'm doing this practice motion. I'm gonna be going in this direction, so I'm gonna kind of a bit of a warm up and then boom. A bit of a warm up and then boom. It's not necessarily directly on the area that's supposed to be, but it makes me, it gives me that rhythm of the motion that I'm going to do. It's also kind of like a, you know, when you're running and you have to stop at a light, you want to just keep on moving. So sometimes you just want to keep the thing going. And confident line helps a lot. Like, so sometimes I just, and it comes out the way it comes out. And I allow it and I keep it. I don't always go back and delete it. And the entire point is because, and here again, I actually changed the pinch point origin there. But the reason I do that and I keep it is because it's a confident line, and a confident line tends to be very beautiful. It's the timid line that's all shaky and it looks terrible. But if it looks like it was just whoosh, put in there, it really adds a type of dynamism to the line quality. And yeah, you do have to be careful. You do have to be careful. You don't want to be sloppy. And again, when you're drawing digitally like this, it's a little bit easier to be confident because you know you could always take it back. Rotating the drawing so that I'm working with the pivots of my arm, natural pivots of my arm and wrist. So you just saw me break down the fingers into their planes, the planes of the fingers. I'm going to do that here again. So I added a couple of extra lines here that really define and refine the fingers, and that area there needed a little bit more, a clearer indication of the finger planes. So you could see that whoops, my wrist made it pop. You could see that I'm trying to solve the origin points of these interior cape lines. So I'm almost there. Adding some of the details of the folds as it's squishing together, and again the folds going in the direction, refining and defining the direction of the form underneath. And I have to rotate so that I could do this, so I could just draw across like that. Boom. And rotate it again so I could just go boom instead of fighting it. So a lot of rotating so that my hand can go in the direction it feels like going. Now this was a little bit of a counter direction. I still did it. I still managed to pull it off, I think. Now notice that I went all the way across sloppily in the bottom of that the jacket. And you'll see why in a second. Very quickly putting in the pocket. Notice it's just really loose and imperfect, and that's okay because it's just a small detail. Now this is something that I wouldn't be able to do if I was drawing analog or inking analog, was to be Um, that's sloppy with the bottom of the jacket there, that it goes right through the belt. And I also, and here I am actually noticing that the pouches that I drew were not the best. They weren't boxy enough. You couldn't. They didn't define the pocket well. The pouch well enough, and that it was too rough. And see, so there, I erased because I erased the pocket digitally. So that's the one of my favorite things about inking in Manga Studio is that you can. There's the eraser tool allows you to. There's a special thing that you do where you just press the delete key and the eraser tool, and it deletes up to two connecting lines. So and so they just disappear the way that it did in that pocket there. So I'll draw all the way down and then just delete the lines in between automatically. It just does it automatically. So now I'm just going to delete all the little bits. Right there. Oop. Too much. Just the little one. Just the one in the middle there. And boom, boom. Really quick. And the program does it all by itself. And notice that I'm giving the belt a little bit of depth there. Now this is where the belt changes direction. So it's a tricky thing because in the top part you're looking at it from above, and in this you're kind of looking at it from below because it changes direction. So I'm making a note of the change of direction of the belt. Now the thickness of the belt will be at the bottom, not the top, the way it was in the first part of the belt there on the farther right. And then if you look at the reference, you see that there's like a chain, like a link holding the belt together. So gotta draw that in there. Cleaning up the line work. There's a lot of overlapping lines here. It's very messy, but I know that Manga Studio can take care of all this overlapping line just very simply. Just like I just did. And drawing the big pouch. Getting very close to the end of the inking. But it ain't over, because this is one of the longest sessions I took sitting down. I just drew and drew and drew. And so we're only about halfway through. I think we still got another hour. And And it's because I end up going back and fixing that face because I just was very unhappy with it. Trying to draw the straps. So I'm making it up as I go because I didn't really define them very well in my rough. So I'm actually drawing them the way I want them to be drawn as I'm inking. So it's a little bit of a freehand kind of an ink thing where I'm just making it up as I go. I'm just going to delete all that. Whoops. There's some actual deleting I needed to do here. So what I'm doing here is I'm deleting some of that just so that it feels like it's the interior line. It's a little bit of an optic trick. If you break up the line like that, it feels like it's inside. It's a little thick though. I'm doing it here too. It's a little thick, at least on that bottom leg one. There's a bunch of little lines crossing through that I just want to get rid of. Taking a look at what I did, saving it. So I'm putting that in a folder. I'm not sure why I'm doing that. I also tend to label my layers because I get really layer crazy and things go. All right. So what I'm doing here is I'm just creating a layer for the blacks, and I just pressed the lighthouse button. So whatever I do references my line layer. So it's as if I am inking on the line layer, but it's not really inking on the line layer. It's just referencing the line layer. So I'm going to put in the blacks in here. And there is a missing line on the leg that I will become aware of when I get to the leg. I'm very unhappy with that face. But right now, really quickly putting in the blacks. Another thing that I like about Manga Studio is that when you create a vector line and you want to fill your drawing in like this, you could set the fill to ink all the way to the actual vector line, not the line that you see, but the actual vector line, the one with the dots in it. So that's why it's going, so it looks so clean, because it's going right through and underneath the actual vector line, going straight to the line itself, the little string that the line shape is on top of. And now I'm going into the mono infill pen. It's the pen that is the most digital, and I'm using that to fill in the blacks. And I have it as a thick and thin. It comes automatically with just it's a dead line, but I turned it into a thick and thin line because I use it so much. It's very helpful for filling in black areas for me. It's my go-to pen in Manga Studio to fill in the black areas. and not only black areas, but any kind of mass color, just like a color area. It doesn't have any. There's no finesse. It's really pixely. It works really well. So you're gonna see me use that monofill on a lot of stuff. So I think this black that I'm doing right now, I accidentally put in the wrong layer. I am putting it in the vector layer right here. And I will discover this in a second. And eventually I'll have to get rid of it and put it in its correct raster layer. I don't know how that happened. So I'm taking a look at the drawing and I thought that I was done. I'm going to come in here and add a little bit more thickness to that exterior line that I did. Remember? It doesn't, now that I'm looking at it the way it is now, I realize that maybe the line variation of the interior matches it too closely, so I decided to kind of pump it up a little bit, make that outline a little thicker. So I created yet another raster layer. Oh, right, so I could add a little bit of light, better highlights. So see how pixely it is? That's the monofill. See how pixely? So I'm like, yay, what a good boy I am. We're finished. There's a few adjustments and a few little details that I'm erasing. I'm looking. So I found there's like a lot of areas of black that weren't quite what I wanted. Oh, right. So this, I needed to make sure that the strap looked like it was wrapping around the leg. So it couldn't be like skin tight. It needed, you know, it's a strap. It needed to look like it had some kind of thickness. I didn't mean to do that. Sometimes that's the program does that just because my wrist accidentally hits the move or whatever. It just kind of moves the whole thing over. And now I flipped it over just to see what it looks like, to see it with a different set of eyes. And this is where I realized that the face just was terrible. I just did not like the face. It's not working for me. So I attempted to fix it. First thing I did was shrink the mouth. Because I wanted to shrink the mouth and move it down so that I could move the head, the whole, well, that area that I'm highlighting, and lower it down to give her even more forehead. Remember the whole baby face formula theory that I'm putting forth? That the more you make her look like a baby, the cuter. I didn't mean to do that. give her a little bit more of a baby face, because that, in combination with the actual adult features of the head shape and of course the body, creates a very pleasing, pretty girl. It's not the baby face so much as the baby proportions. Like I said, big eyes, small mouth, small nose, giant head. It's the proportions that make it. When I say baby face, I don't actually mean drawing a baby. It's kind of gross. So I'm sitting here trying to fix. I'm trying to fix the face, but really, no matter what I do, no matter what I'm gonna do here, it's not gonna help. Because it's just not a good face. And now that I look at it like this, I don't think it's any better. So, and I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at it, going, why is this ugly? Maybe it's this. Maybe if I fill this in, it's going to make it better, but not really. There's fundamentally something not working. So it happens, you know, when you're doing a drawing and you're trying to get done, and sometimes you just don't see it. Sometimes you just don't see that that you're messing up, that you screwed up. That something's not working, and you're getting ahead of yourself. You're finishing the drawing when really you should have probably thought about it a little bit more. And again, with the hair, does it look better without the hair? Because it just looks like a big clump of who knows what. Now that I fixed the face, or fixed the face, like thought I fixed the face. So at some point I flipped the drawing back over and realized that I just wasted my time. But I'm still staring at this thing. I'm not sure what it is that that I could do to fix it. Now that I flip it over, it's even worse on this side. It just looks terrible. And then I look at my rough going, is that better than the rough? Is that better than the first? Did I just screw up? Should I have left it? And the answer is, yeah, I should have left it. So I go all the way back as far as I could go on my timeline, on my history, before I fixed it. Just making sure that I'm going to the right spot. And leave it. But it's still not right. Still doesn't look good to me. And this is one of those frustrating moments where you're just like, okay, you know what? Back to square one. Let's fix it. So I create a new raster layer. I get my red rough pencil, and start again with a new head. Not the whole body, but the head, definitely. That's the entire point. So I'm going to try to be a little bit more careful. I still don't like just go full on construction head here, but I try to be a little bit more careful with my hair with my face placement and things like that. See, so I'm actually adding some corners. So I drew this ball. I saw this one artist draw this ball around the face. So what that does is sometimes he draws the face with it contained within that ball, within that cylinder, ellipse, I should say, and he tries not to get out of that, and that contains the face. It gives that baby proportions, those baby proportions, because you have to draw within the ellipse. So it forces you to draw the baby proportions in that ellipse. And with the hair again, this time around, I'm like, okay, so the hair has an origin. So see, look, I'm drawing through this time. I'm drawing the hair coming out of a specific place behind the head. There's an origin point that the hair is pointing at, and so that kind of solved that problem, that hair problem that I was having. Also, the eyes are a little bit less. They're slanted upward. And I think that was one of the key things that was missing. I was drawing droopy, sad eyes, which is okay, but I think that it really needed more almond eyes. And here I am actually working out the structure of the nose a little bit more so I don't fall into that I don't know what to do with the nose thing. The eyes are being a little bit more solid. And I think that even this is, I still think needs to, I made the mouth smaller. So I'm going a little bit too far out of the ellipse that I originally drew to contain the face. I really should make it smaller, but it is what it is. But it's right now already. It's already looking a lot better. Much bigger forehead. I don't know what happened there. Okay, so just drawing the eyelids. So just adjusting and adjusting and adjusting this face. So now that I've got everything placed where I want it, it's time to adjust. That's really what it is. It's putting in the cowl again. I realized that the eyebrows that I originally put over on the right hand side over there were too wide. They were as wide as a cowl would be, so I got rid of them. So this hair is working a little bit better, but I still, at the end of the day, after when I started coloring it, I actually fix them up a little bit more. So I zoomed out just to see the overall. Again, I'm working on that ellipse. For some reason, I drew this, I reinforced the ellipse and still don't contain it within the ellipse. So I remedy that. Okay, and then I just make the adjustment. Take a look at it, see if that's what I want, because I needed to keep it within the ellipse, right? And that's what I wanted. So now I have to make the adjustments. So yeah, that ellipse really helps contain the face. It gives it, it helps. It's a good little trick. But the eyes are off. They're a little wonky, like one eye is higher than the other in a weird way. So right now I'm using the eraser tool to sculpt the line the way I want it to look like. Yeah, it does feel sometimes like you're sculpting. You're just putting pieces off and then shaving it off. If you're ever sculpted, that's what it's like. Smoothing things out. So that's way, way better. I like the proportions a lot more. Like you could compare both the first one and the second one, and the second one is much cuter because of the proportions. Big head, little face, big eyes. Baby proportions. Much cuter. So just finding the side of the face, finding the center point of the face, of the head, I should say. And now, even though it's really rough, I'm gonna ink it anyway. Because I'm in such a rush at this point. And that is a raster layer. I don't want a raster layer, I want a vector layer. Oh, it's because... Oh, right. I'm not going to ink it. I'm going to fix those eyes. Remember how I said that the eyes are wonky? Well, I'm going to make sure that I refine them and make sure that they're okay. And essentially I'm going to do the same thing that I did earlier in this video, which was fix the eyes, just go over the eyes, make sure that they're solid, that the eyelids are wrapping around the eyeball, all that stuff. I'm doing it, but this time with the eye being much more of an almond eye. Slanted up rather than slanting down. And if you're wondering if the videos are all going to be this long, no, they're not going to be this long. I think this is the longest video. This is the longest run of time that I had to draw during the week. So just really refining some of these facial features. So I wasn't foolish enough to just go straight in and ink. I think this time around I was like, no, I'm going to get this face right. I'm going to make sure that this doesn't happen again. That I have to draw the face 3 or 4 times. So it's a struggle every time. I mean, it's always a challenging. Drawing is problem solving. I try to explain that to anybody that I'm coaching, that drawing is problem solving. You're solving problems, and the more tools you have to solve drawing problems, the better your drawings will be. If it's not a problem, if you're not finding problems, and if there's frustration, if you're getting frustrated, it's because you don't have any of the solutions to the problem solving. You have to and problem solving comes from having done it so much that you have the experience to know how to fix it. But first you gotta do it. Then you have to come up with the problem. Then you have to find the solution to the problem. Then you have to try that solution to the problem. See how well your solution works. If it doesn't work, then try a different solution. And that doesn't work, and until you finally find the solution that you need. And then, but again, it's still problem solving. Constantly solving problems. This is a much better face. Much better. Oh my gosh. So much better. Slight adjust on the eye there. And way better. Way better. Oh my gosh. such a better face. But I think it might be too small. I mean, the head. Oh, that eye is... Just need to adjust. There we go. A little further apart. I think I end up increasing the size of the head a little bit, maybe. This needs to be adjusted again. I'm just looking at the way that the eyes are rhythmically connected, and so I just adjusted that one a little bit higher so that it flowed better. And it's a way better face. And again, sculpting the line there. Okay, so it's time to... What am I doing here? Camera's in the way. I am duplicating the line so I could have, so I'm not drawing directly on my original. And I am going to delete the head. The first thing that I need to do, though, is put it all together in the right folder. Put it all together so that I have it on the underdrawing as an underdrawing, so that I can be able to ink it. I have to put in other words, I have to put the layer in the right order so that I could have it underneath the layer that I'm going to be inking over. So I could be inking over it, I should say. So now I'm going to delete the face. The face on that original ink layer. So it's all kind of sort of disappearing because it's vector. They're all vector lines. So it doesn't, they don't delete the same way that, oops, I didn't mean to delete all that. Let's go in there and delete the specific lines I need to delete. And so once again, I got to outline and all that stuff. But first, I have to make some adjustments because that head seems a little bit off, doesn't it? It doesn't quite, that neck is not quite attaching to the neck of the bot. It's weird. So my solution is that it's the head itself, and I didn't quite select all the lines I wanted. So it was a sloppy selection, so I'm going to try it again. It's a very subtle head adjustment. Well, maybe not so subtle. It just seemed like her head was like way out and too small. Which is what I said earlier. I thought the head looked too small. So I enlarged the head a tad. So that's better. And I think any other imperfections that I see, I could fix it with the inking. So the first thing I do is I want to get the marker pen line, because I got to do that outline that I do. And monofill is the wrong line. That's not the right pen. And it's not there on the list, so I gotta go get it from that Milli pen. The Milli pen, and I have to increase the line because I don't want to have to adjust the line afterwards. So the Milli pen in Manga Studio kind of works like a micron. It's the equivalent of a micron pen, basically. It's the digital equivalent. So I did the outline just like before, just to make it all, because I have to Frankenstein this new head into the old body. So yeah, the kids are outside the door playing. All right, and doing the final inks on that head. I feel so much better about this face. See here, my kids? I don't know what they're doing, but they're having a great time. So, I'm screwing up here. Of all the things. So, I'm like, okay, I gotta define this eyelash so it looks solid to me at this stage. Even though it's going to end up being all black and you're not going to see any of the dimension in it, I need to see the dimension in it. So the top plane of the eyelash, then it goes up. And then we've got that turn of the eye. It's kind of like a roof, you know, like this. But sometimes you can see it from this side, and sometimes you see it from this side. So I'm thinking about it that way. I'm thinking about it as a, gosh, I don't know what I could use them as an example. But yeah, so like a roof, like. here we go. See, drawing that side, this side of the roof, and then drawing it up here like that, but this side comes up, and now I'm drawing this side, the inside, so like the outside and then the inside. So you see that like that. Yeah. And then there's the eyelid, but I'm not going to get to that yet. So that's too far away. That side of the cowl is too far away from the ear, so I adjusted it. And that line is too close to the ear, so I adjusted it. Here's another sloppy ear. Okay. I think I decided just to leave the highlight out, and I was just going to use the white, the way I did with the mono pen, the fill-in mono pen. Which is why it's called the fill-in mono pen, because it helps when you're filling in stuff. Slight erasers there, overlapping lines, just cleaning up those lines. So I'm being extremely careful here, especially in this. Like I said, the face is kind of critical, especially on a pretty girl. Be careful with the tangents. Missed it there. See, if I had touched the cowl line with the hairline, that would have been a tangent. This mouth is different than the one that I drew in the other one. I kind of drew the mouth overlap. Kind of strange. It's got like this little pointy thing. Get rid of that pointy thing. But it's the idea being that the teeth are this tube, and the lips are on top of that tube, and so you've got that. So it's going further away. That was the logic behind that. And then you can see that the lip is going all the way in there, the bottom lip. Almost done. Just got to do the hair and part of the top of the cowl there. And then, of course, I have to blacken it. Add the black. Okay. Now add the black. Yeah. Well, much better. Much better. Oh my gosh. And I didn't like the other face. I just didn't like it. Well, and apparently I didn't like that line there on the cheek. Just making sure to straighten it up a little bit. Make it a little bit straighter. Okay. So I'm going to turn on the black, which is wrong right now. Gotta erase all the black, but I can't see it, so I'll probably have to reduce the opacity in there so I could tell what the blazes is going on. Whoops. I'm erasing my face. That's not what I want. That's better. Okay, I did reduce the opacity. Alright. And now I just use the fill tool to put in the blacks. Much too thin. Gotta get my monofill pen. So there's a bunch of little tiny spots of white everywhere. Oops, I missed the part in the color there. I'll get to it in a second. So right there I'm putting in that highlight from the original. I'm just going to drag it in. Oh, so here's where I made the mistake. I'm using the monofill to fill in these little white spots, not realizing that I'm doing it in the actual line layer itself. And that's when I figured it out. I'm like, oh, it's the line layer. Actually, it's not when I figure it out. When I figure it out is when I turn off the black and realize there it is. There are the little spots. The reason why it's important for me not to have that there is because those will eventually there's going to be some self-ink lines happening there, and just can't have them in there. Trying to get rid of that extra little chunk, and then I just said, forget it. So I still got to go in there with the black and fill in those extra little black spots, this time on the actual black layer itself. There. Much better. It's looking better. Now I'm actually literally just moving the highlight around. There we go. So much better. So, oops. That's what it looked like. That's what it looks like now. Much better face. Save it. And now I thought I was done with the video and all that, but I think I added an extra little chunk because I kept on staring at it. Oh, by the way, and I wanted to flip it just to see if it looked okay. So here I go, trying to flip it. And it's okay. I'll live. I thought it was done. But I kept on looking at the thing. And I thought it still needs... You see that there's no... I mean, I drew the cowl and I drew that overlap and all that stuff. Well, well, you'll see. So what I did was I'm going to color white. Whoops. I'm going to color white on the line itself. So I made a duplicate of the black line. And then I locked that line, and I'm changing the color of that line to white. So that within the black, there's a little bit of light. And I'm looking around to see if I need to do it anywhere else. I don't. And that's it. And so there's just a slight adjustments that I'm going to do on that, because it doesn't quite look like it. Look at that looks terrible. That's because I wasn't on the line. Get on the line. So I got on the lock layer and then I do it. Yeah, it's a little bit better, but it's not the greatest. There, that's better. Much better. But now you have to clean up that line. So the line needs to be cleaner because it's sloppy. But in order to do that, I need to get in there, and with the monofill pen, I just refine it. Still on the lock layer. I need to do the same thing with the ear, the other ear, because I don't like that black line like right coming across like that. So I want it to just kind of there, like that. Like that. Yeah, like that. And then, yeah, this part, this was a pain. I don't think I got it exactly right. I did a little bit of, I think the way it was kind of works, because like if I leave it like that, it doesn't work. If that's not quite right, there's a little bump there. So there. And that's it. That's the drawing. All inked. Sort of. The hair is still not right, but I'll get to it. So that's the drawing, and next time I'm going to finish up the hair so that it looks a little bit more like hair, and then I'm going to start the coloring process. So that'll be the next part. Sorry this one took long, but like I said, I'm not speeding up this video. That's how long it takes. You see the mistakes, you see how the fixes, you see that it takes a long time, you have to make the adjustments, you have to fix the thing. It's just a pain in the neck. But you're solving problems the whole time. So I hope you got a lot out of this. If this was helpful to you, I encourage you to go over to my Patreon page, and the link is below in the description of this video, and help support my videos so that not only does it encourage me to continue doing these videos and empower you and help you out through drawing, but also because it also gives you stuff like this Batgirl drawing. You're going to get a high res JPEG if you're a bronze patron, and if you're a silver patron, then you get the PSD file itself, along with any artwork that I do over the month, including desktop pictures, and I do giveaways as well of original art, which is what this postcard is. Actually, it's the preliminary of a postcard that I give away every month, and this postcard specifically has already been won. but you could get the next one. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. All right, bye.